What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next, we have got an update on the CGC scam, the Reholder scam. There are a few different things that have come up, some new changes specifically with GoCollect for a way that can help you identify fraudulent books, as well as some minor updates from CGC that I've had people ask some questions about specifically during my live stream. Thought we'd go over those, as well as my thoughts about the last month and what I'm doing moving forward. Let's get into this. All right, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. So it has actually been just about a month since the 99 newsstand broke this whole thing open with his post on Instagram. And it feels like it's been a lot shorter than that, but it has been a month and there have been some recent updates. One thing that I thought was really cool that was done by GoCollect, as well as a couple little updates that I've had people asking questions about with respect to the response from CGC about this. Then, like I said, talk a little bit about my thoughts, the fact that we're a month later now, and what I'm doing specifically. So first thing here, let's go over to the GoCollect Instagram page. And if you're not familiar with GoCollect, it's one of the tools that's used for pricing comics, and it was integral to identifying these fraudulent books. It was generally a combination of GPA, which is one of those search tools, and GoCollect, where GPA was being used to look up the cert numbers, and then GoCollect was being used to identify the pictures to find those books that didn't match. Now, about 5 days ago, so it was on around January 10th, I believe, GoCollect had this announcement here where they said they've been recording high-resolution scans of nearly every graded comic book sale in the marketplace for many years. We have also been logging accompanying CGC certification numbers whenever available. Saving this data has been imperative toward enhancing the collecting experience, but now we find ourselves in a unique position moving forward. To complement the efforts of CGC in cracking down on fraudulent activity, GoCollect is internally discussing the implementation of a new functionality on our website that will allow you to search any CGC graded collectible and photo match it against all previous sales with the same certification number in our database. So that was on, like I said, around like January 10th. It's a little hard to say because it says like 5 days prior. I don't know exactly when it was posted. But then on about the 14th, they came up with that fix. They actually got that fix out very, very quick, which is really impressive. And up here, they say this is the best we can do for you for the moment. We've taken the investigative efforts of our community's best and streamlined them into your hands. We have a ton of community engagement projects in the works for 2024. This is just the top of the panel, but you should have this kind of power at your fingertips while hunting grails today. So I just want to make sure I put this out there so that anybody that's interested in this knows that this is there. We're going to go through that tool real quick to kind of show you some examples and just say that, I mean, that's a great job by GoCollect. I mean, this is great that they turn this around this quickly, something to really potentially help people in identifying issues like this, because a lot of people out there think that this probably wasn't just one person. And so this potentially gives you the ability to identify other cases a little more easily if they are out there. Now, I know there have been people that are also complaining about this, saying that, you know, the fact that you even need this means that, you know, graded or slab books are worthless, you know, that whole thing. And all I can say is, I mean, I know I will not be able to convince people that graded books serve a purpose, that they have value out there, but I know this is definitely a black eye to CGC. I do not deny that, but we just have to think of it as there's always going to be people out there, no matter what. If there's money to be made, people are going to try to scam. And so if there is a tool out there that makes it so that you're less likely to be scammed, less likely to be taken advantage of, why don't you use it? You know, and so this is one of those tools that's out there. And I have been a big proponent of GoCollect, a big proponent of GPA, and I am also sponsored by Fanalytics for when they have their pricing tool out in the future. I think that these are very valuable tools, and this is just one of the ways that they can be used. So let's check out this new GoCollect tool. So if you log into their site and you look on the left-hand side, you have this new tool here that says Cert Lookup. So if we click on Cert Lookup, And I have a few certification numbers just copied just for examples. And one of them that I have here is an Amazing Fantasy 15. This is not one of the fraudulent books. I just picked this one out as an example because it was an older book. So I figured, like an older slabbed book. So I figured it would likely have the potential for multiple entries in this tool. So, you add that cert number in here. They also have the ability to scan the label. They have a button here. But if you add that cert number in, click lookup, it not only looks up the certification details, it tells you it's a 6.0 white pages, when it was graded. But if you go down to the bottom here, it's got those recorded sales for CGC cert number, 01362690001. And you can see here, these are definitely the exact same books. You can see the exact same paper loss on the lower right-hand edge of the page. It sold in September of 2022 for $93,000, and then it sold 9 months later for a $15,000 loss. So not great for the person that owned this book. They took a $15,000 loss on this book, but you can see that this is the exact same book. This is what you could use this for. That if you were picking up a book and you checked that cert number and you wanted to make sure that what you're looking at matches the pictures for these prior sales, that is the value of this tool. Now, I will say, I still think that there is value in using GPA as well as GoCollect. This is something that, it's great. It is much quicker and easier than trying to search through for these things. But if you go down and look at, say, Amazing Fantasy, here we go, Amazing Fantasy 15, you can see that they don't necessarily have the cert data for all of them. And so GPA typically does. And so if you go over to GPA and you type in Amazing Fantasy 15, then we take a look at this one and we just go down to a, let's see, like a 6.0. And we just look at the different, the different sales. We've got all the cert numbers over here, cert numbers. It's different ways that GoCollect must get its data than how GPA gets its data. And GPA is more likely to have all those cert numbers. So while this is still a very valuable tool, maybe it's something where they will eventually scan these images and use that information to populate these cert numbers. So it is more complete because you can see they've got really high quality images. They could potentially pull those cert numbers out with some type of scan of the image. But I just want to point that out, that is one little limitation there. And so just so you're aware, there is still value in checking both places, but this is a very great first step for this. Now, just for example, with how this works with one of the scam books, here is the X-Men 266 that I talked about in my second video. And so you can see here, this is that cert number from that X-Men 266. This one is actually on the CGC page as one of the potential scam books. And if we go down here, we can see there are 3 sales for this cert number. Got this one here, where this is the one that I showed that it's the direct edition. This cert number was with the direct edition of this book. Then you look at, this is when you can see when that was swapped out. Now it's a newsstand. And that's why it went from $760 to $1,700. And then here's that same sale, newsstand. Maybe the first person didn't pay, I don't know. But then we have this $1,680 sale. And so this is where you can really easily see how this tool can be used to quickly identify that something is wrong. Now, the other one I wanted to point out was one that they used as the example on their, their little introduction to this tool. And it was for that Amazing Spider-Man 252 Mark Jewelers. And what they've been doing, if that one was identified as definitively a fraudulent book. Now, this is something they'll be updating over time, because there was some discussion that GoCollect might actually remove those listings completely, but they ultimately decided not to, based on feedback from comic collectors, from the comic community. They decided not to remove those, but actually keep them because they're valuable to have them there. But you can see they now have these alerts next to the sale, where it's crossed out, has this, this exclamation point and a little triangle thing here. And if you actually go to that sale, on the top here, it says this sale was identified as one involved in a holder tampering incident investigated by CGC. GoCollect will not use this sale in FMV calculations, but will maintain the record publicly as a resource to the community in service of promoting transparency within the market. So that's what that means. as they are identified as fraudulent, they are, marking them here. Now, the one thing I do want to point out, just so that you don't inadvertently make this mistake while you're using the tool, it's a little bug that I will have to probably write some type of email to GoCollect to see if they can address this. But you can see here that I'm looking at this 252. If I then go and try to look up the Amazing Fantasy 15, and I search for the Amazing Fantasy 15, it updates here, but down on the bottom in the sales, it doesn't actually update. And so what you have to do is you have to close it out, then go to the cert lookup again. Now, if you look it up, you get the Amazing Fantasy 15 here, and you get the Amazing Fantasy 15 sales. So I just want to make sure I point that out because it's something that could potentially cause confusion, because if you were trying to check a whole bunch of those sales that were in the CGC list, for example, let's say I do a search here and I change that cert number by 1. So it's a 2. And this happens to be an Amazing Spider-Man number 2, but there's no sales records in GPA for this specific cert number. Now, if I looked up the Amazing Fantasy 15, you can see it still says this doesn't update the recorded sales. And so if you actually had one that was valid, that actually had recorded sales that were wrong, you might think, oh, there's no issue. There's nothing that, was identified here, but there could be. So just make sure in between each search, you close the cert lookup window. All right. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about, and I've seen a few people post about these two topics on Instagram. So it must be new. I can't remember exactly when I originally read these, if this information was on the CGC news notification or not. It must not have been, because I've been seeing people post about it on Instagram, like the 99 Newsstand, Josh's Comics. And I also had some people ask questions about it during my live stream, and at least one of these topics during the live stream. And so if you go over to that, go over to the CGC webpage, and this is all under news. Then you go down to the updated CGC incident. It does say that it was updated on January 3rd, but I think they've actually been updating some other things inside of here since then. And so one of the things that they have updated here was, what are the changes being made because of this incident? And it's this line right here. Every Reholder submission is now being reviewed by a senior grader, and we have made other significant improvements to our process as a result of this incident. I don't believe, and based on what other people have been commenting, I don't believe that this line, this every Reholder submission is now being reviewed by a senior grader, was here before. And so that is one of the big changes that they're making as part of this. Now, to me, this isn't, I'd like more information. This isn't as clear as I would like it to be, because it's not really clear what this actually means they're doing. It doesn't sound like they're regrading every book. I know some people have said they think they should regrade every book. I have touched on this, that there are other impacts to that I think we also need to think about, like 9.9s, 10.0s, even 9.8s, books like that, where you're probably just never going to have people reholder those books again out of fear that they would lose the grades if they were going to completely regrade everything that gets reholdered. I'm not saying that's not what they're going to do. I'm not saying that's necessarily not like a bad idea, but there are some other impacts of doing that. But what it does sound like to me is that it sounds like they're just having someone with a trained eye take a look at each book. And instead of, I don't know if it was just, people cracking open the cases, putting them in the new thing and re-slabbing them. And there wasn't really anybody that had comic experience or a grader or whatever actually evaluating them in between, unless there was something really obvious that that person saw. And so now you're going to have the senior grader look at each one, but are they actually cutting open the interior well? Are they looking at every page? Because we know there were issues with the Hulk 181s having missing Marvel value stamps being put in there. So you would hope that this means they are actually doing a full evaluation, whether it's actually grading or not, but doing a full evaluation of the book. And that's just not clear based on this. Just an example of something where I would like to see some additional information on that updated statement. Now, the other update that I've heard some people talking about is in this opening line right here. If your book is determined to be correctly graded, it will be reholdered with a new certification number and returned to you at no charge. If your book is determined to be incorrectly graded, CGC will retain your book as evidence, and you will be compensated for fair market value of the book in accordance with the CGC guarantee. I am almost certain it did not say that before. I think before it just said you were going to be contacted by our like customer support team and we'll determine what steps we're going to take. And so people were wondering, does that mean you're still going to get the book back, but then they're going to pay you the difference between whatever your grade is and what the grade should have been? Or how is this all going to work? Are they going to give you, like CGC grading credit, for the value of your book? But this gives you a little bit better answer about what they're actually going to do. Because I know there are people that are concerned about sending their books back in because they didn't really know what was going to happen. Because once you sent it in, you've relinquished control of that book. Like if they find out it's fraudulent, you're not getting that book back. I just imagine that it's just, you're not getting that book back. But there are some questions still from this. For example, how are they determining fair market value? Are they using GPA? Are they using last sale, last 90 days, last year? Like what is being done to determine that fair market value? And I did address this a little bit on my live stream. I'm sure there are going to be people that are upset about this. For example, if you bought the book a year ago or 2 years ago during the comic boom and you paid twice what it's worth now, you're going to be upset that you're not getting back what you paid, but you're getting back half of that or whatever it might be. I don't really see that as much of an issue. I feel like the goal here is to make you whole so that you can get a replacement copy. And so if you bought an Amazing Spider-Man 300 9/8 2 years ago for $7,000, and then now it's worth $3,000, and they give you $3,000, you can go out and buy another Amazing Spider-Man 300 for $3,000. And I think what I would recommend doing is just following something like Elite Comics 11 on Instagram. They have books like this come up pretty regularly. You can find a reasonable price, and I think you would be able to get a copy for that value without too much delay. So if that's the path you want to take, you can get that book back, and now you have it back in your collection as the accurately graded copy. Or you can just keep the money and, walk away from comics and all of that if that's what you want. Like if this has burned you and you decide you're not interested anymore, that's the other step you can take. But I do think that the purpose here is to make it so you can actually get a replacement copy. And so I think it's a reasonable response, because the other way you could look at it, what if you had bought a book from him 5 years ago? Does that mean they should pay you back what you paid then? And now you can't get a replacement? So that's how I kind of look at that. Now, the last couple things I just wanted to touch on was the fact that it has been just about a month since this issue was first broken by the 9/9 newsstand. And the thing that I've noticed is that it's already getting significantly less attention after a month. I really don't hear people talk about it very much anymore. There's occasionally a post like when there's some type of update like this from CGC. But I mean, it did last longer than the attention that Acetate Gate got, or like the label note removal when CGC removed things like tape and detached centerfold and those types of notes that were on the labels. Those were a couple of the other things that had some pretty big uproars, but those died out after maybe a week or two. This one seems like it's kind of dying out after a month. So if you want to make sure that this is still something that's taken seriously, just make sure you keep talking about it. I mean, that's the important thing here. You have to make sure that you keep talking about it, keep bringing it up, voice concerns. Like if you're one of the people that has sent books in to CGC to get addressed and they find out that your book was fraudulent, I'm sure people want to know what that process turned out like for you. I mean, let people know so that there are updates and there's continued information about this topic. Now, the other thing is, what am I doing specifically? And I was actually watching the Pressable Defects show that they put out maybe like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. They had Very Gary and Erod on there. And Very Gary made a comment that I completely agree with. And this is what I'm going to be doing as well. And that's that I'm not sending in any additional books to be graded until we have some type of solution from CGC. Now, I do have one that's there already. So I am going to be, or it's on the way there that was my Superman 2 that I was having worked on that started months ago. So well before this. So that one is going there. But other than that, I'm not sending anything else in until we get some type of resolution. There's a couple reasons. One is that I don't want to have to deal with maybe getting books recased again after that whenever there is some type of resolution to this. The other reason is I think that's how you actually put the pressure on to get this change implemented quickly. I mean, what's going to happen if less people are sending in books is they have less money coming in and they are motivated to fix the problem. And so I think that that is a good approach to take, that if you don't need to send books in right now, just wait. Wait until we have some type of solution, and then you can send books in if you want them to get graded. I realize not everybody can do that. I realize that there are a lot of people out there that make their living from comics. They need to get books graded, and that is what it is. I can't do anything about that. And I don't blame anybody for sending in books. If you want to send them in anyway, that's fine. It's just that this is the way that I think that I can actually have some type of impact where I'm not sending in these books to be graded right now. And hopefully that helps motivate CGC to come up with a resolution more quickly. All right, so that's everything I wanted to cover as part of this video. Those are all the different areas that I have seen updates about this CGC reholdering scam over the last about week or so, last few days. And I just thought it would be useful to put it all in one place here in one video if you're not aware of what is going on and what these little updates have been. If you'd like to see more content like this, I've got more videos over here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Subscription button is right here, and I will see you in the next video.